Fantastic. Good morning, everybody. It is October. What is it? 13th of October. Good morning, everybody. It is the 13th of October. This is AI with Kyle, and I'm going to be running through the latest AI news and updates of the day. So last Friday, it was a little bit quiet. So we actually did a special issue where we talked about some really useful AI learning resources. I've put together a page, I should say I'm putting together a page on AI with Kyle. If you go to aiwithkyle.com and then to the bottom, there is an AI learning guide, which is all of the resources that I put together last Friday. A couple of the embeds are still not working, so I'll fix them up. But there is an ultimate AI learning resource guide, which is now available on aiwithkyle.com. So that came out in the newsletter today, and it was covered in the live last Friday. And yeah, it's got everything you need to basically work through in order to become extremely knowledgeable in AI compared to everyone else out there. So I just want to give you a heads up about that. Again, that's aiwithkyle.com. So last Friday we didn't have that much news, which is why we did that special edition where we walk through learning materials. Today we do. So we've had a number of things that have come in over the weekend, which are complex topics. I'm going to put it that way. I think that's probably that's an understatement. So we're going to have a look at the intimidation or potential intimidation case of OpenAI. It looks like they tried to intimidate some people during a campaign in California. So we're going to have a look at the details of that. It's a little unpleasant. And even the, now what is he? Joshua Akiem is the head of mission alignment at OpenAI. He's come out and said, this is not great. This does not seem great. So I think we're going to be hearing a lot about this over the week. So I wanted to run through what's happening, try to get a grip on it. It's extremely complex, so we're just going to have a first pass at it, have a look at it. Also wanted to look at the State of AI report 2025. This is a report that comes out every year. I think we've been going 7 or 8 years now, and it's a really good resource. So we'll look at the top findings in that, and I'll give you a link so you can go and have a look at it yourself. The EU's recent $1 billion plan, which is, let's put it this way, it's not enough money if you're investing in artificial intelligence, but the EU is patting their own backs right now about this. And then also looking at plumbers, whether they're actually safe, and then a couple of new features coming to ChatGPT, including direct messaging and shopping directly in app. So that's in India at the moment. They're testing it out. But first, let's get to the main story, the one that I think is going to take over most of this week, because it's a little bit unpleasant. So there's a guy called Nathan Calvin, and he works for he is the general counsel of Encode, a small AI non-profit that has 3 full-time employees, so very small. So Nathan Calvin was served, here we go, one Tuesday night as my wife and I sat down to dinner, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the door to serve me a subpoena from OpenAI. I held back on talking about it because I didn't want to distract from SB 53. This is the law we need to talk about, but Newsom just signed the bill, so here's what happened. You might recall a story in the San Francisco Standard that talked about OpenAI retaliating against critics. Amongst other things, OpenAI asked for all of my private communication on SB 53, a bill that creates new transparency rules and whistleblower protection at large AI companies. Why did OpenAI subpoena me? Encode, company he worked as general counsel for, has criticized OpenAI's restructuring and worked on AI regulations, including SB 53. I believe OpenAI used the pretext of their lawsuit against Elon Musk to intimidate their critics and imply that Elon is behind all of them. So SB 53 is a piece of regulation that has now been pushed through in California, which requires the companies to be a lot more open and a lot more transparent about what they are doing. And it's been pushed forward in California. Most of the AI companies, including OpenAI, were extremely against it. And they wanted to change it so it didn't include companies that already had some kind of federal regulation. So basically, they wouldn't have to abide by the Californian rules because they'd already agreed to some federal rules, which basically included all of the AI companies. So it would have allowed all the American AI companies to ignore SB 53. So OpenAI were actively campaigning against it. During their campaign against SB 53, it looks like they've been sending out subpoenas to people who were fighting for SB 53. Now, interestingly, Nathan Calvin has not come public about this, the guy who got subpoenaed, until after the political discussions, after the vote. So he has taken, I think, the correct position of, I don't want to interfere in the political proceedings, in the democratic decision of whether SB 53 goes forward. I don't want to kick up a fuss during this process because I believe in this happening. I believe in the process. Whereas OpenAI seem to have been sending out subpoenas during the discussions. So it looks like they were trying to influence the political proceedings, which is intimidation. And if this is true, if this is found to be the case, they're in a lot of trouble here. So Nathan Calvin pushes forward. There's a big problem with that idea. Elon isn't involved with Encode. Elon wasn't behind SB 53. He doesn't fund us, and we've never spoken to him. So Sam Altman, or OpenAI, or whoever authorized these subpoenas to be sent out, is saying that Elon Musk is behind companies like Encode and is kind of like pulling the strings in the background and using it to attack OpenAI via these other bodies like Encode. So the subpoena was sent out to basically requisition records, including private communications, in order to find out whether this was the case and whether Elon Musk was fiddling around in the background. So OpenAI went beyond just subpoenaing Encode about Elon. OpenAI could and did send a subpoena to Encode's corporate address asking about our funders or communication with Elon, which don't exist. If OpenAI had stopped there, maybe you could argue it was in good faith, but they didn't stop there. They also sent a sheriff's deputy to my home and asked me to turn over private texts and emails with Californian legislators, college students, and former OpenAI employees. This is not normal. OpenAI used an unrelated lawsuit to intimidate advocates of a bill trying to regulate them, while the bill was still being debated. OpenAI had no legal right to ask for this information, so we submitted an objection explaining why we would not be providing our private communication. They never replied. A magistrate judge even chastised OpenAI more broadly for their behavior in the discovery process in their case against Musk. This isn't the only way that OpenAI behaved poorly before it was signed. They also sent Governor Newsom a letter trying to gut the bill by waiving all the requirements for any company that does any evaluation work with the federal government. Yeah, basically saying if we are under federal rules, then the California rules don't apply, etc. So this is problematic, and it turns out there were a few subpoenas sent during this time. Very interestingly, Joshua Ashim, I'm not sure how to say your name, sorry Joshua, has tweeted, "At what is possibly a risk to my whole career, I will say this doesn't seem great." Now, Joshua is the head of mission alignment at OpenAI. So he's inside of OpenAI and he works on the alignment, how we can make sure these models are, beneficial for the good of humanity. Lately, I've been describing my role as something like a public advocate, so I'd be remiss if I didn't share some thoughts for the public on this. And then he goes on to discuss it. All views here are my own. Very, very important here. My opinions about SB 53 are entirely orthogonal to this thread, so at a right angle. I haven't said much about them so far, and I also believe this is not the time, but what I've said is that I think whistleblower protections are important. In that spirit, I commend Nathan for speaking up, the guy who got subpoenaed. I think OpenAI has a rational interest and technical expertise to be an involved, engaged organisation on questions like AI regulation. We can and should work on safety bills like SB 53. I want to see the... Here we go. We can't be doing things that make us into a frightening power instead of a virtuous one. We have a duty to and a mission for all of humanity. The bar to pursue that duty is remarkably high. The dangerously incorrect use of power is the result of many small choices that are all borderline but get no pushback. Without someone speaking up, once in a while it can get worse. So this is my pushback. So yes, I do wonder if Joshua is going to be keeping his job this week. He won't be fired this week because that's going to look bad. The optics are terrible on that, but I would not be surprised if Joshua has just lost his job just slightly further down the line when it's less embarrassing for OpenAI. So this whole thing is a mess. It's extremely unpleasant, and it's all wrapped up in how much power OpenAI has over the market as a whole, because it is connected to practically everybody now. So we're getting to the phase where OpenAI is potentially too big to fail. And then what role should AI companies have in the regulation of artificial intelligence? Because obviously they are not impartial parties when it comes to these discussions. So SB 53 did pass anyway. Passed in September, a couple of weeks ago, and it requires requires all AI developers to submit risk assessments and transparency reports to California, which is a big push. But OpenAI were actively trying to shut this down, and it seems like they were squeezing smaller groups. They were squeezing individuals by serving up scary subpoenas, which is a big problem. And when you are sending subpoenas or you're threatening to wrap up in legal proceedings a 3-person policy non-profit like ENCODE, when you are a $500 billion titan, it's not a good look. It is an extremely problematic look, and they're going to be unraveling this for the next few weeks. I'm going to hop over to some questions because this is a big, complicated topic that is just coming out. So I just wanted to give you the broad framework of what's going on. Definitely go and read about this though, because it is complex. Too complex for me to unravel myself. Any questions? What do you think about investing in Tesla? I don't give investment advice, I'm afraid. Plus, you shouldn't listen to me anyway. Any good free USA VPNs? I personally pay. I use NordVPN. I hear that VPN, VEEPN is good. It's a Chrome extension and it's free. I haven't used it though, but give that a shot. Cool. Marta saying, morning, last Friday episode was extremely helpful. Thank you. Awesome. Marta, so if you go onto AI with Kyle and you go to the resources page, which is at the bottom in the footer, I've put together a kind of a web version, a page version of last Friday's live. So hopefully that's useful, and it gives you links to everything you need, all the different free courses, the AI canon, structured learning, etc., etc. So hopefully that is handy. Okay, let's move away from the scary news. Let's talk about the State of AI report. So the whole thing is available at stateof.ai. Every single year for the last, I want to say 7 or 8 years, this report has come out, and it's really good. So it's by Air Street Capital. Produced by AI investor Nathan Beniak, or Benak. I'm screwing up the names today, I'm sorry. It's been going since 2018, and it's really good. So they've just come out with their report. They have produced a 25-minute overview as well, and then the full slide deck is available. It's a couple of 100 pages, so I'm not going to be going through all of it. You can also download it as well. But what I want to do is have a quick look at the standout topics, and then point you in the direction to go and read through it yourself, because everyone's going to be interested in it for different reasons, and it is, I believe, it's several hundred slides, or normally is a couple of hundred. So a couple of key takeaways here. So OpenAI retain their lead, a narrow lead at the frontier, but competition has intensified as Meta relinquishes the mantle to China's DeepSeek, Qwen, and Kimi. Close the gap on reasoning and coding task, establishing China as a credible number 2. That's interesting. Meta relinquishes the mantle of what? Open source. So Meta used to be the only kind of open source game in town, especially in the West. That's no longer the case. And most open source has now moved to China. So DeepSeek, Qwen, and Kimi. And OpenAI have their own open source model called OSS, but Meta have given up the game there. So yeah, OpenAI still at the front, but a diminishing lead, which I think is fair, because we are seeing across the board all of the models are getting very good, extremely good, and increasingly it's a marginal gain between each model. Reasoning defined the year. Yes, it did. I forget that we haven't had reasoning models for that long. As Frontier Labs combined reinforcement learning, rubric-based rewards, which causes problems that we've talked about before, and verifiable reasoning with novel environments to create models that can plan, reflect, self-correct, and work over increasingly long time horizons. So this has been a big push, and a lot of the news has been about OpenAI and Gemini and various models passing things like the International Collegiate Math Competition, ICMC, and getting gold medals in the International Math Olympiads, etc., etc. And that is based on reasoning models, which has been a big push over the last year or so. Prior to that, we didn't have such good reasoning models. When was O3 released? O3 was released in... I don't even know. Oh gosh, O3 was released in 2025. Forget how quickly all of this goes. Everything moves very, very fast. So we've only had O3 for 6 months or so. AI has become a scientific collaborator with systems like DeepMind's co-scientists and Stanford's virtual lab, autonomously generating, testing, and validating hypotheses. In biology, Profluence Progen 3, I don't know that one, showed the scaling laws now apply to proteins too. So this is, every time I see a scientific breakthrough on the BBC or whatever, mainstream media, it's always interesting to click through and see what role AI had. And it's kind of the norm now. AI is being deployed in so many different scientific endeavors. Just being able to run a lot of tests extremely quickly changes the game. And as we're moving forward with world models, which is said to be the next kind of paradigm that we're going to be moving into, that's going to increase because we're going to be able to potentially simulate physics and simulate real world experiments. So watch this space. I think next year when we're looking at this report, it's going to be about world models. Structured reasoning entered the physical world through chain of action planning as embodied AI systems, so robotics basically, such as A12's Moral Act and Google's Gemini Robotics 1.5 began to reason step by step before acting. Commercial traction, here we go, this is interesting, accelerated sharply. 44% of US businesses now pay for AI tools, probably ChatGPT, up from 5% in 2023. Okay, so it's gone up a huge amount. So it was 5% were using it in 2023, we're paying for it, excuse me, now it's 44%, so that is a massive increase, with average contracts reaching about $500,000. So it's not just buying their staff ChatGPT, it sounds like it's more than that. And AI first startups grew 1.5 times faster than peers. I'm surprised it's not higher, but still. What else? The industrial era of AI has begun. Multi-gigawatt data centers like Stargate signal a new wave of compute infrastructure backed by sovereign funds such as US, UAE, yep, they entered the game as well, and China, with power supply emerging as a new constraint, which is why people are looking to China to push forward, because they've managed to get cheap, clean energy and sustainable energy in a way that most of the rest of the world has not managed. And then AI politics hardened further. The US leaned into the America First AI. That was Trump's AI. What's it called? What's it called? It wasn't the AI Act. Oh, Artificial Intelligence for the American People. The AI Action Plan, that was it, back in July, which is very much against China. So it's like, we need to take this seriously. This is now a strategically important technology, and we need to put a lot of money and a lot of resources into making sure we're ahead of China. So America First AI. Europe's AI Act stumbled. Yes, I'm going to talk about Europe in a minute. And China expanded its open weights ecosystem, which is open source, and domestic silicon ambitions, because they have to, because NVIDIA chips are being throttled. So the open weights ecosystem, I've talked about this before, is a form of soft power. China is making their models available freely, and allowing countries outside of Europe and America basically to have access to these models and to build upon them. They've become the open source, the free alternative to closed source OpenAI and Anthropic. So definitely have a look at this paper. The paper is always amazing. As you can see, it covers a large number of topics. God, I could do a video on each one of these, but instead I'm going to point you at it. I'll put it in the newsletter tomorrow. So if you're signed up to the newsletter, there'll be links to the report. I'll give you the direct link so you can get straight to it, as well as pull out some other interesting stuff. But you could spend the whole week reading through this and get an awful lot of information out of it. So have a look at it. Awesome. Just going to hop over to questions. What's this? Trying to get a code. Yeah, if you're trying to get a code, go to aiwithkyle.com. It's my website. Go to the bottom, and in resources there is a Sora code guide, and that will walk you through a whole bunch of different ways to get a code. I don't have any left, I'm afraid. I gave all of mine away. Anything new coming with Claude soon, you think? Probably not. No, because we just had 4.5. Sonnet 4.5 was... It can't have been last week. Was it the week before last? Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. So Monday, yeah, exactly 2 weeks ago, we got 4.5. Anthropic released a lot slower than ChatGPT. ChatGPT is always throwing something new out, whereas Anthropic basically plod along. Every time I see a notification from Anthropic, like, oh, they've just posted, I know not to get excited now because it would generally be a new safety report. Bless. Whereas with ChatGPT, you know, oh shit, they're gonna. Sorry, can't swear on stream. They're gonna release something exciting. With Anthropic, it's generally not exciting. So they have a much more staggered release schedule. The next thing we'll probably see will be Opus. So we're on Opus 4.1 right now. So we'll probably see a 4.2 or maybe jump straight to 4.5. But I would imagine not until a couple of months from now. But I might be wrong, who knows. I think what we're expecting next is Gemini. Gemini 3 is the next one. You've probably seen that meme of the cycle. We go from OpenAI to Gemini to Google to Grok to Anthropic. And there's always like the new best model, and it's the best model for like 2 weeks before something else new comes out. Okay, Europe. I just mentioned Europe and the EU AI Act. God, I'm never going to be able to say that properly. So Europe have done a big announcement. They've got really excited, the EU in particular, talking about their Apply AI plan. So the EU has just launched a 1.1 billion euro Apply AI plan to boost artificial intelligence in key industries like health, manufacturing, pharma, and energy. The goal is simple but ambitious: build European independence and reduce reliance on US and China tech. Europe finally wants to stop buying the future and start building it. €1 billion is not enough. It is not enough to play this game. This is high stakes poker at this point. You cannot get into the game with €1 billion. The amount is now in hundreds of billions, moving towards the trillions quite quickly. Remember that Meta went on a hiring spree, and they hired this, I think it was 24 years old. They hired one guy for $250 million. So a quarter of what the EU has dedicated to spending on all of its AI. This kind of money, this is what a small startup in San Francisco get with one of their early rounds of funding, $1 billion. This is not sufficient for playing this game. So let me pull up the actual Reuters and see if they've got a link. So this, it's not enough to build EU independence, because building independence requires building your own foundation models. Now we have a company here, we have Mistral. That's probably the closest. So Mistral, they have a valuation of 14 billion. Let's see what their most recent investments were. September, so about a month ago, they raised 1.7 billion. So the EU is talking about 1 billion to kind of push forward AI in the EU. Mistral, which is one company, one EU company, just raised 1.7 billion. Like, the numbers that they're talking about are insufficient to catch up. Like, if you want to catch up, you need to pay even more, because there's now years of falling behind. And it's certainly not enough to become independent. So I don't know what the EU are doing. I also think that most of this money will probably go into the pockets of people who are connected into very high cost, very low impact kind of research and regulation and funding. Like I don't think anything useful is going to come of this 1 billion either. I think it's going to be frittered away. So this just reinforces that the EU they've lost this game already, and they have no intention and no will to get into it properly, which is sad because the more competition we have, the better. But no, this is increasingly it's just China and America, and that is it. I have a B2B marketable niche AI based app. How do I get it off the ground? Depends who your customers are and where they hang out. It depends what existing assets you have. Like, do you have an audience? Do you have an email list, for example? If you do, use those first. If you do not, you have a couple of ways. So you can either build an audience, which is content marketing, newsletter, etc. It takes time though. It takes 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, multiple years. You can buy an audience. That's advertising. So for B2B, I mean, LinkedIn ads are very expensive, but they might be the way you go, or Google ads. Whereas Meta ads, which are much cheaper, tend to be better for B2C. Not always, but generally. Or you borrow an audience. So these are your three main options. Build an audience yourself, buy an audience with advertising, borrow an audience by working with influencers, talking to people, giving them either paying them up front or giving them affiliate shares. Affiliate payment off the back of traffic that they send to you. They're the three main ways to do it. You can also do cold outreach. So with B2B in particular, you'd be using LinkedIn. Specifically, you can do things like LinkedIn Helper and Meet Alfred in order to send out lots of messages. It's a numbers game though. It's very much a numbers game, and you need to be able to send out a large amount of messages with a convincing enough hook to get people to talk to you, and then you go from there. So there are lots of ways, but it depends who the market is, what the product is. So it's kind of a hard question to answer without a lot more detail. But those are your broad buckets. So you do one of those things: you build an audience, buy an audience, or rent an audience. Okay, I want to talk about plumbers. Which seems odd. Why am I talking about plumbers? So plumbers are often the archetypal oh, this job is going to be safe from AI, you don't need to worry. It's things like carpenters, plumbers, electricians, tradesmen, generally people who are very good with their hands. They can build, they can create, they can fix. Really important skills. So increasingly this has been this is what you should do if you want to be safe. I think Geoffrey Hinton was recommending this the other day too. Geoffrey Hinton was like, yeah, you should become a plumber. So it's almost stayed. It's this this recommendation that people kind of throw out without necessarily thinking about it that much. So we are actually seeing AI start to impact on plumbers. One of the reasons why plumbers, I'm going to use plumbers, but this applies to carpenters, it applies to electricians, it applies to trades in general. One of the reasons why these trades, these professions are considered safer is because robotics is much further behind artificial intelligence. It hasn't had its ChatGPT moment as of yet. We're seeing things like the Figure, which looks really cool, but we're not at a point where instead of robotics being cool tech demos, we can actually think, oh yeah, I'm actually going to buy one of those. They're not cheap enough, they're not good enough for the average consumer to be like, yeah, I'm going to buy a robot. Will we get there? Yeah, probably. In the next decade or so, we'll probably start to have robots. It might take a couple of decades, but in the time horizons of technology, it's not that long. But we're not there yet, which means that these physical tasks like climbing under a sink and fixing something is still very difficult to do, and AI cannot really impact that. That's been the argument that's been made. However, there's a CNN article about plumbers using AI specifically for knowledge. So AI is really good at knowledge-based work, and what AI is increasingly helping plumbers with, and this is a very anecdotal article, but what they've started to do is using AI to help with diagnosis. to help with working out how to fix things, and all of the tasks around the physical installation. So in a survey of more than 400 tradespeople across North America, by House Call Pro, so we'd have to check who they are and what their intentions are here. Earlier this year, they found that more than 70% of respondents said they had tried AI tools, and 40% said they actively used them. Younger professionals are leading the charge, makes sense, though older workers are testing the waters too, haha. So looks like lots of plumbers and lots of tradesmen are starting to use artificial intelligence. What this potentially means, and we don't have evidence of this, but what this potentially means is you can speed up how quickly you can get a job done. If all of the manuals, if all of the knowledge are kind of built into the artificial intelligence, and you're able to use video, for example, to show the AI what you can see and to help you diagnose things, you can move faster and you can get the job done quicker. This means that we don't need as many plumbers in the same way that we're seeing in software engineering, that we're seeing in white collar jobs, where if you have a human who is augmented with artificial intelligence and they can suddenly do the job of two humans, there's a question of whether we need to hire two humans. And we might see what we're starting to see in lots of industries with just less positions becoming open. At the same time, AI allows lay people, people like myself, to do basic plumbing. So an example, I fixed the unit under my sink about a month ago using ChatGPT, put it in video mode, showed it what I could see, showed it the fittings I had, asked it like, what do I do? What's the order of operations? How do I do this? And then when it was leaking afterwards, because I didn't do it very well because I'm not a plumber, I asked it, okay, what do I do now? How can I fix this up? And it told me what I needed to get, how I could seal everything and make sure it was a good job. So we're going to see two different adjustments here. And we're seeing this in other jobs. Like we're seeing this in white collar jobs in particular. We're going to see one, the supply of work becomes a lot higher because somebody using artificial intelligence can suddenly do a lot more. And this is true in plumbing too, not because the AI helps them physically, but because it can help them with the diagnosis, it can help them read the manuals, it can help them work out how to do the job. And at the same time, you're going to see a decrease in the demand because a lot of people are going to be able to do the work themselves at home. I was actually at a Google event 2 weeks ago, which was specifically about that. It was about helping people to do their own DIY at home by using the Google Gemini video mode to show it things like, hey, I've got a problem, I've got a hole in the wall here, how do I fix this? And Gemini would walk them through saying, okay, first you need to sand off, then you're going to get this filler, then you're going to let it dry, then you're going to sand it off, then you're going to paint it. It would walk them through the steps and allow them to do the job themselves. What that leads to is a decrease in the demand for tradesmen because some jobs can be tackled by homeowners. So I think people like Geoffrey Hinton, or generally the kind of, oh, just become a plumber, just become an electrician, that's going to be safe. I think that's dangerous. I think that is not thinking through the implications of AI enough. So I don't think these are as obviously safe as a lot of people are saying. And we're already starting to see this with 40% of plumbers and tradesmen using AI on a daily basis. I want to see what happens with productivity and what happens with the amount of work that allows a plumber to do. We don't have the data on that yet, to be fully clear, but I would imagine we're going to start to see AI have an impact in trades in the same way that we're seeing in the white collar, just at a slower rate because less of it can be fully automated. Ed O'Brien. Yep, the threat to tradespeople is the average person using AI to give them enough knowledge to do the job themselves and not pay the said plumber. Yep, 100%. So when I had this sink issue the other day, I could have called someone in. They could have had a look, but then I'd need to carve some time out of my day for them to come over, and then I need to pay them. And there's so many kind of barriers there when I was just like, oh, I'm sure I can do this myself. People have been doing this stuff themselves for hundreds of years. I'm sure I can work it out. And I got ChatGPT, it walked me through and it told me how to do it. So I think we're going to have this double push on the trades in the same way that we see it in a lot of other industries. Like, for example, consulting we've been talking about recently. So with consulting, a lot of businesses might think, well, I can just use OpenAI, I can use ChatGPT to help me think through these problems. Why do I need to hire an expensive consultant. Whether or not the consultant does a better job doesn't matter, because you need to think from the consumer's point of view, the person who's paying. Yeah, maybe they get a better job from the consumer, sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to hire the consultant. And at the same time, you don't necessarily need as many consultants, because ChatGPT and other AIs are allowing individual consultants to do more work. So we're seeing this same pattern across different industries. It's just going to happen at different speeds. We call this a jagged edge in AI development. Not every industry will be hit at the same speed by this technology. Is it possible that people running AI workshops could be replaced by AI, or not an issue? Yeah. So this comes under the education and teaching umbrella, I would say. So with education, this is a fascinating thing with education as a whole. So we've had all the information has been available for a long time. Like, let's say I wanted to become a computer scientist, I can go and I can read and work through and do the examinations and do everything using like MIT's OpenCourseWare. I can get all these Stanford curriculums. I can get all of that stuff. And that's been the case for a while. Like, information is extremely free and extremely open. AI has made this even more so. So I can now talk to an AI on a daily basis and have it tutor me on practically anything. I could learn anything that I want in the world. And this is open to everybody, which is extremely exciting, extremely fantastic. However, education is not just about the information. It's not just about being guided through that information either. It's more than that. It's, one, having the realization that you need to learn this stuff yourself. Two, being self-driven enough to put yourself through this kind of education. And then three, kind of sticking with it. Like, a lot of, when you sign up for a university degree or certificate or whatever it is, it's the fact that you have a deadline, the fact that you have people around you, a community, the fact that you have teachers, you have support. It's all of that extra infrastructure that actually gets you through the learning. So this is a problem across education as a whole. The information itself, fine, easy, and AI makes it even easier to access information. But education is about actually getting through that information, applying it, using it as a skill, and often humans need to be dragged kicking and screaming through information in order to actually learn and start to apply what it is they want to learn. So this is always going to be the case, and I think this is why teachers are still pretty safe, because most people are not self-directed learning. And so for AI workshops, it's going to be very similar. Yeah, sure, you can go and find information. You can learn how to use AI yourself, and I'm sure a lot of people on this stream, a lot of people watching this content later, are those kind of people, because you are watching this kind of content. Most people out there are not. They need to actively be engaged in training, in workshops, in curriculum. They need to be forced to do it, basically, and that's what companies pay for. Nate saying, I used ChatGPT to get a plumbing permit that master plumbers usually apply for and got approved. Okay. This is another threat to the plumbers. Nate, specifically. That's amazing. AI can't get a Corgi gas certificate to fit gas. Yes, so there are always going to be regulatory and union blocks to these things as well. In the same way that we're seeing with self-driving cars, a lot of the self-driving car technology is there. The block that is meaning that it can't be widely adopted is more from regulation and law. So that these are always going to be friction points that are going to slow down the adoption of artificial intelligence in certain areas. We're going to see the same in law, for example. As long as an AI can't be held legally responsible, that's going to slow down the adoption of AI for legal help. Because when you hire a lawyer, you are in part, you're hiring a lawyer to basically take the legal responsibility off you. Because if you act in a way following what the lawyer has said and you get sued, you can then turn around and sue the hell out of that lawyer. So there are certain regulatory and legal frameworks that only apply to humans, because AIs are not people, they're not persons yet, maybe won't ever be, which mean there will be friction points here. And again, that's the jagged edge in artificial intelligence. It's these kind of friction points that stop the technology taking over, not because of the progress of the technology itself, if that makes sense. Would you rather gain muscle or gain eager? I don't know what eager is. Thank you for the answer. That's quite welcome. I could see demand for model training from specialized tradesmen training AI. Yes, 100%. So I'm sure there are companies already looking at this where you load in all of the technical manuals. So you have that in retrieval augmented generation. You have that in a database, a vector database. You throw all of the manuals in. That's easy. But then to make it a useful product, you need that reinforcement learning from human feedback. So you have basically the tradesman using it. You pay tradesmen to use your AI and to say whether it's a good answer, whether it's a bad answer, and to kind of annotate the data and help you to clean it all up. So yes, I think there's a couple of businesses that can be made there. One, you set up the business you're building the application that's going to be used by tradesmen, or two, you become a kind of a data broker where you provide access to tradesmen. This is the same in any industry. You provide access to the people who can train that data and who can annotate that data. Would these blocks prevent companies forcing AI to reduce workforces? Is profit going to be first? The profit motive, at least in the West, tends to override most things, unfortunately. One of the good things about one of the bizarre contradictions of AI is that it uses a lot of energy. However, it is in the best interests of the AI companies to reduce that energy consumption or to make energy cheaper. Not out of the goodness of their hearts, but because it aligns with the profit motive. Because if they can decrease their energy bills, they make more profit. And because energy is such a large part of their cost basis, it's a big problem for them to solve. And this is why companies like Microsoft are looking at building nuclear power stations, for example. And all of the companies are trying to make their algorithms, their training more and more efficient in order to reduce that training cost, because the training costs are now creeping into the hundreds of millions. So as long as something is aligned with profit, generally over the long term, it will play out well. So in this particular case, the fact that energy costs a lot and the AI companies want to reduce that cost is kind of working in our favor. I think that profit will override most other considerations in the long run. So obviously, like self-driving cars, for example, that is being held back decades by lawmakers and people who do not want it. So they're using laws to block self-driving cars. Unions, for example, transport unions, trucking unions are going to block this. They're going to fight it tooth and nail because that is the end of logistics. It is the end of the driving profession if self-driving cars can become a reality. I mean, and how many truckers in the UK and in the US? It's hundreds of thousands. Let me see. Wow, 3.6 million professional truck drivers in the US. So obviously they have unions, they have political clout. They want to fight tooth and nail against self-driving vehicles, no matter what. Whether or not it's good for average people who just want, a self-driving car, those 3.6 million people and the whole industry behind that will be fighting tooth and nail. However, I think that profit and technology is very hard to block in the long run. So I think 50 years from now, the trucks will be self-driving. I think that is a no-brainer. I think 10 years from now, we don't know. So over the long run, these things profit will override everything else. It's just going to take a lot longer in certain industries because of legal protections, because of union protections, etc., etc. But if we extend our timescales, then all of this kind of disappears. It's all noise. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, a couple of little features from ChatGPT. So I know ChatGPT is mainly going to be in the news because of the the intimidation case, but at the same time they are still shipping. So a couple of things been noticed. One is the ability to send direct messages inside of ChatGPT. So this was noticed on a demo that ChatGPT were doing. So they often use their own accounts when they're doing the demos. I don't know why. So you can often see kind of new features in the interface which they bring up on screen, I think by accident. So one of them is it seems to be a little icon of a like a paper plane. It's a message sending icon. So somebody's looked into the code. This is Tibor. So it says direct messages has now been added into the ChatGPT Android app, codenamed Calpico or Calpico Rooms. And direct messaging was first introduced yesterday in the new Sora 2 iOS app. Okay, so it's going to be in Sora 2 as well. The code also mentions options to update your profile and profile images, plus other features like notification when somebody joins or leaves a chat, and push notifications when someone or ChatGPT sends you a message. From the hints I got, this is still an early version, you can use ChatGPT in group chats, but things like your personal memories won't be accessible in DMs to ChatGPT or anything else. So it looks like the ability to create rooms and to have other ChatGPT users in your room, but you can also talk to ChatGPT, which I can honestly see as being quite useful. So for example, if I was trying to plan a holiday with my partner, we could both be in the same room and we could be chatting to ChatGPT and it would be like a shared chat. I think that's really cool. And I think there are really, really big work usages of this as well. There will be a question of how you kind of juggle the amount that ChatGPT says compared to the humans, because humans tend to talk a lot less than ChatGPT. So I think interface-wise, it's going to be a bit messy. But I think this is kind of a cool-looking addition, and it's also pushing ChatGPT or OpenAI towards becoming a social media network, a place where you spend more time, you do more of your work, you do more interactions. So you're not necessarily going to browsers, you're not necessarily in the email client, but you are instead in one place. And again, this is what OpenAI want, because the more time you spend using their services, the more information they get, and the better their models can become. So I'm sure we'll be seeing this over the next few weeks, because ChatGPT are continuing to add new features all of the time. Speaking of, let's hop over to a chatbot-led e-commerce. So India is kicking off the pilot, fascinatingly. So India has kicked off a pilot to let consumers shop and pay directly through AI chatbots. So we've seen shopping before, we have not seen paying. So with OpenAI's ChatGPT leading the rollout and integrations with Google Gemini and Anthropic's Claude in development, as the South Asian nation becomes the next major market for global AI companies. So the National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI, is the federal body behind the country's widely used Unified Payment Interface, UPI. So I guess like Alibaba in China, Alipay. Partnered with OpenAI and fintech firm Razorpay, so not Stripe. Oh, Stripe's not available in India, is it? That might be why. To enable consumers to shop and pay directly through ChatGPT. Wow. So Razorpay confirmed to TechCrunch that the pilot is being rolled out nationwide and will become widely available in the coming months. So we all kind of know that this is coming. And there will be resistance. Because I've seen a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to give my credit card details to ChatGPT. No way. Like, imagine the agent going off and just buying some stuff on your behalf. But I think we said the same thing about you buying stuff on the internet. If you're a bit older, you'll remember when e-commerce was a new thing and people were initially like, there's no way I'm going to give my credit card details to a website. They'll steal it. Like, they're going to buy things. But that doesn't happen. Like, we do a huge amount of e-commerce. I mean, Amazon would not exist unless we trusted our banking details, our credit card details to a company like Amazon. So I think there will be resistance, but this will become increasingly more common. It's also, this all plays into what I've been going on and on and on about for months. It plays into advertising. So OpenAI will eventually become an advertising platform. There is no two ways about it. There's no debate here. People are going back and forward about, oh, do you think they'll add adverts? Of course they will. As soon as they can, feasibly can, without it tanking their reputation, they are going to add advertising into ChatGPT, especially on the free plans. So we've already seen the implementation of shopping. We saw that on Dev Day. See the ability to connect with Shopify, Etsy. There were some others as well. So being able to make purchase decisions on ChatGPT, but then you'd still be sent to the website in order to finish your transaction. The next step in that integration is just to allow you to purchase directly from ChatGPT. So you do your shopping, you're talking to ChatGPT, you're working out what it is you want to buy. It shows you all the options. You say, cool, that looks good. And then you are going to process the transaction in ChatGPT as well. Makes perfect sense, and it's going to be aligned with them being able to advertise as well. Let's say I'm looking for a new kettle. It's going to give me a few options, including a sponsored option, which will be highlighted as this is sponsored, and people will be paying OpenAI for that. So I can see this being the future. Very interesting to see the pilot is in India. We generally see pilots of these things in smaller countries. India is now the biggest country, so it is the opposite. It's the most populous nation on earth, bigger than China now. So rolling it out in India is one hell of a push. And best of luck to them. But yeah, we normally see it in smaller countries for this reason, because you keep your test small, you make sure it works, and then you spread out to other nations. But no, instead they're going for the world's most popular nation. I mean, go for it. It'd be interesting to see how this goes, because this pilot, if it works in India, I'm sure we'll be seeing it in the rest of the world further down the line as well. Okay, that's pretty much everything today. Again, the big news is this intimidation suit. This is still breaking news though, so we'll get more today. It's Monday. This broke over the weekend or just before the weekend, so I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more over the next week. So yeah, I will certainly be covering it as more developments unfold, because it's a bit unpleasant. Also, as I've mentioned it a few times already, if you go to aiwithkyle.com, the website, I've put together an ultimate AI learning resource list. I need to rename that, it's a terrible name, which is a bunch of learning resources in order to get yourself feeling confident about your knowledge of artificial intelligence. So going through some nice kind of basic fun videos initially, and then into things like Andrej Karpathy's series, the 3 videos that he put together, and then a couple of books that I recommend, and then structured learning via free courses on deeplearning.ai, the platforms, academies, OpenAI, and now Anthropic have academies, which are quite good, and then also the AI Canon, which is a list, show you what it looks like, a list of all of the most important papers and the most important findings in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So that's a bit heavier, so I've got that down towards the bottom. So that's a resource page for you that I put together. If you go to aiwithkyle.com and then go down to the bottom, you'll see all the resources, and you'll see AI learning guide there, so make sure you go and check that out. And this website is new, so I'm still fiddling around with it, so it's a bit of a mess. Apologies while I'm doing that, but I'm not going to wait for it to be perfect before I launch it. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to finish up the live, and I will be back tomorrow morning around the same time with more news from the world of artificial intelligence. Thanks, and have a great day.